nervous tonight because that has been a while. It's like doing it starting again, Scott, right? But we're going into a fascinating and very interesting subject and something that I've pondered about for many years, you know, and I think many people might have done, which is hollow and inner earth, the underworld, you know. And I mean, what a fascinating subject. There's a lot to go down on this, you know, but the very concept to me isn't, some people might think, oh, out there, but to me, no. I mean, we know there's caves, and what is the theory of hollow earth? Some people might not even know what that is. It's that the inside the earth, instead of it being solid all the way through, there's either layers of different realms, reality going into what some people believe to be like a miniature sun, or other people believe that there's pockets and huge voids and different levels and points in the earth where there's a void in this universe. I believe that it's filled with consciousness and one level of consciousness to another. And this is probably resonating in our planet. And yeah, there's mysteries inside the earth that the ancient people knew, and they certainly spoke about. I'm sure we'll go into that later. So yeah, super excited. So I'll pass back to you guys, but thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, we're super excited, everybody, about going into inner earth and hollow earth and all the different aspects of, you know, what could be below our feet. So I know Jackie has a few questions lined up for us. So why don't we get started? What do you got for us?
Yeah, well, Brett touched on the hollow earth theories and what they mean. So I'm going to dive into the Native Americans and indigenous people. What did they say about the earth realms, the inner earth realms?
Yeah, I definitely know, you know, the Hopi people. The Hopi people actually had a couple occasions where they had actually said ant people came up to save them. And they also talked about, you know, that they went into earth and then they came back to the fourth world. So that's meaning that they were inside the earth living with these ants. And they talked about, you know, they did have people are like, how did they survive? There's no food or anything down there. Well, I guess the ants actually made this kind of a bread that helped people survive. And it was enough protein substance, you know, for humans to be able to survive down there. So I know, you know, like that case. And there's also cases of not just ant people, but other Native American tribes also talked about the moon-eyed people. So there's different tribes and different cultures and so forth that actually talk about inner earth. So, and, you know, do you know anything about any tribes or, you know, anybody that else talked? You know, we talked about, you know, mythologies and so forth also, like the Greeks and stuff like that also talk about inner earth. So did you want to cover anything?
Well, so certainly it's one of these subjects, isn't it, that goes back, and it's similar to the Great Flood. If you go back to the most ancient and oldest stories all across the world, all different continents, they all speak of a Great Flood. Also, inner, hollow earth, or the underworld is spoken about all the way back. If you can go to Romans, Greeks, Egyptians, Sumerians, and I would go further than that and probably say Lemuria and Atlantis at these times. Maybe it was more active at that point. But certainly with the tribes, it's very interesting with the ground people. And it's spoken about in the tribes, isn't it, Scott? You know, you just said this, but it's known that maybe not just once, but cataclysms, you know, different times they've taken these people down to, and the ground people, the ant people are like an ant species. You know, when you look on Earth, we can see there is ants and like a animal nature, but then also there's monkeys like us. So yeah, could there be resonating insects in there? And of course, when you think into hollow earth and the idea of this, you're talking of chasms that could be completely, so some of them might have like entrances and ways and you can go in, but other realms, if you think about it, could be completely shut off, closed off from our reality, and it's a completely different realm. And, you know, there might not be, but there could be life resonating in there. So, I mean, there's stories all across the board, really. You know, I mean, any culture you can go to speaks of the underworld and these beings. You know, we can go to India and they spoke about the Naga, which were like meant to be like serpent-type reptilian species, though they weren't spoke about in a bad way, very enlightened, key of wisdom and knowledge, which often the serpent can be represented with. I think they sometimes get given in a bad lay. Our nervous system, our behavior patterns certainly react bad if we see snakes. A lot of people would have a bad reaction, so therefore it's in our behavior pattern. But if they're an evolved species in the earth, they well could exist. I mean, there's the Aztecs as well. They spoke about the underworld and then they went there, and there's a lot on that. The Mayans. So yeah, I think it's just one of them that's all over the place, you know, and it certainly is an interesting concept to think about. And when the whole world speaks about it, and again, I'll say it, it's not, is it that far-fetched to think there could be, we know there's caves, you know, there's like the cave in China they found, you know, like a few years ago, a decade ago or what, which is basically almost that, but on a higher level. And we know, and I say this a lot, you know, I say this fact a lot because I find it interesting. 2014, it was discovered that inside the Earth, there's 3 times more water inside the Earth flowing around in the Earth than is in all the oceans, the rivers, the lochs, the lakes put together. So think about that. And then when I was a kid, man, they used to say to us, like, on the deep in the ocean, there's no life. And that was, people believed that. There couldn't possibly be life in these deep places. But now we know they've sent submarines down to, like, not all the way, but they've sent them down deep where they didn't imagine to be like. They send off a glow of light once or twice, and then the reaction to the animals, their bioessence, the fish is there, then they're surrounded by life. And I imagine it's probably the same in the hollow earth and inner earth, that there probably is highly probable that there are at least one. And Agartha is something we'll probably speak about in a bit, you know, that the Agartha and the Agartha network, which we know Hitler and many, actually the British have searched for that, the Americans have searched for that, the Spanish, you know, which is known in esoteric you know, philosophies and ideas. So yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely something to it, Scotty, but I've lost my train of thought a bit there, so I passed it back. Sorry, my daughter's just come in and completely distracted me there.
No, you're right. And then also, like you were talking about, you know, there being different stuff inside these caves. Like Emery Smith, our good friend Emery Smith talks about it. If you guys go watch him on, you know, Gaia TV, he actually talks about it. You might, I believe it's on his TikTok page as well. But he talks about inner Earth and the missions that they did down into inner Earth. And going back to the tribes and so forth, the Inca actually talked about it. And what was it? The Cusco's caves in Peru was another belief of the Inca, said that they came from in there. The Brazilian Indians, it was, what was it? Tribes living near the Prima River believed for their forefathers and stuff emerged from under the ground, under earth. And that, so they actually believed that, you know, their heritage came from inner earth. There's a lot of cultures, there's a lot of different, you know, tribes and stuff that actually talk about they lived inside the earth. The Hopi and some of the other tribes that talked about how the ants had saved them. The first time was from I believe it was fire, and then the next time was ice came across the world, and it was the third time was from the floods. And they actually talked about the flood, just like the Bible talks about the flood. You know, Native American tribes have talked about the flood. So many different places have talked about just the floods and having to go into inner earth. And like Emery had talked about, we were just saying about that Emery actually talks about the plant life, the, you know, light. There's actually a light, almost like a sun that's down there that, you know, helps produce with life. And he's talked about the creatures that were down in inner earth. And yeah, I find inner earth just super fascinating. See, you know, and then I know Jackie had another question popping up here for us too.
Well, Emery says that microclimates and biodiversity and pockets enclosed within inner earth and a whole atmosphere that sustains itself. So I was wondering, Brett mentioned Agartha, but what about Shambhala? Have you guys heard of Shambhala with the Tibetan monks?
Yeah, I know Brett's heard about Shambhala. Why don't you talk about Shambhala a little bit?
Well, yes, Shambhala is spoken about as the capital city. Some people speak of the capital city or the hub of the Agartha network. And I think you touched on something, you know, I think, you know, quite important there. That when we think into the hollow earth, we think of the spaces and the potential spaces and voids that could layer down into the earth, is that there could be many different things going on there. I mean, and like people talk about extraterrestrials or aliens. I mean, I would theorize that you may, and I'm just saying may, but you may in these pockets find life so different to what we can even imagine that you know, you think they haven't got to deal with the problems of the surface, like you just spoke about with the natives, like, you know, the ice, the fire, and the water. That's just free. You know, this planet's been here millions and millions and billions of years, right, in linear time. And who knows the stuff that could have happened and wiped out and restarted. But if you're in these pockets and you have like a water source, which we know there's 3 times more water inside the earth than there is on the whole earth, it's just mind blowing when you think about it. So we know they got water, and we know there's energy from the core. Like some people say it's a quartz iron spinning magnetic field, blah, 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 blah. But also I like the theory where there could be a star, or it could be like a miniature star. Or there could be something like we have solar systems and atoms going around actually inside the earth, that there could be these things going on, and there could be things moving around in there. Who knows, man? But yeah, I would say, sorry, what was the question, Scotty? I've gone off my own thought then.
Oh, no problem. Love Jackie. Throw it back out to you.
Sorry, Jackie.
We were talking about.
Yeah, we were talking about Agartha and some
Agartha,
Shambhala.
yeah. So Agartha's, yeah, I'm with it. So Agartha's like spoken about, and it goes back a long time, you know. And so Shambhala was about. Some people say it's like separate to Agartha, but many people say it's either the capital or the hub, which is the Agartha network is under the earth, and it's from being. There's two theories on this I've come across, and both I find kind of could be true actually. That some of they've been a separate force on Earth. So they've been there, maybe could have been there for millions, who knows, a long time, but they've always existed in there. But also other people say that the times of Atlantis and Lemuria, of the fall of a golden age into a dark age, which, you know, you theorize when that was, but that could have been some time ago. I'd say before, it wasn't pre-flood, it was probably way before that. The people, when these cataclysms are happening on Earth, the people, there's different ways. So some beings ascended up. They changed into a new higher form and a new realm of reality. Others may have not been hit from this time, may have not come from Earth, and they may have simply left in craft or spaceship or anti-gravitational technology. Some beings might have been rescued from others, but it's also theorized that some may have gone into the ground. And we can see some evidence on this. In China, they found these incredible caves and they're carved out, which they were staying in. Also, there's several in Turkey, which underground subterranean levels, so people could have hidden. So Agartha could be made up from like basically a being that's set on a different realm from Earth. So it's inside the Earth, but it's protected. So it's not like on the surface we're experiencing duality, you know, separation, individual, I, you, me, we. Where inside they might be resonating at a different frequency, a different reality, where they're actually more unified, and they haven't got the same kind of problems that come with living on the surface of duality reality, which would mean that they are like knowledge holders, wisdom keepers. And a lot of people do say that they've got the information from all these different cycles, all these different civilizations, beings, forms of consciousness that have existed on the surface. They have a record of this. But sometimes certain beings of a certain frequency, a certain, like Nikola Tesla speaks of, if you want to understand the universe, you think in energy, frequency, and vibration. So in this place might literally, physically, by being a higher vibration, a higher energy, and a higher frequency, and therefore only certain people could enter. So like when you're speaking of the ground people to help the Hopi and the Indian tribes and the Native Americans, that it might have been because they were on a certain frequency, a certain resonance field, that they would come up to help them and bring them down. So I'd think Agartha certainly could be definitely a thing that exists there, you know, that there is this network of Agartha. But then is that the only thing that could be in these different pockets on Earth? Probably not. I mean, and then a lot of people have always known about the idea of Agartha, of this inner world. This goes back thousands of years. So if you were searching for that, and people have gone on expeditions, and maybe at times these entrances were more known, they weren't shut off, they weren't hidden. You know, Antarctica is certainly one. But people might have gone in and they might have found areas in Earth that are right down, and they found these caverns, and they might have called it Agartha. That's another thing we have to think. It doesn't mean it's the actual Agartha that's spoken about, because I would say if you think of the space that's inside the Earth, there's room for pockets and pockets and pockets of voids, holes, and even realms. So I hope that made some kind of sense.
Almost definitely, bro. Yeah, that's great. You know, teach people a little bit about, you know, what Shambhala is. And yeah, let's jump right into our next one, bro.
Well, are there any other mythologies that speak about Hollow Earth? Like the Greeks speak about Hyperborea. Did you find anything else in the research?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, you know, different things they talk about inner Earth, and like Mount Shasta and Hyperborea. You know, I'm not too familiar with Hyperborea, so unless you know a little bit about Hyperborea, I'm not too sure about that one.
No, I can certainly say that there's plenty of ideas about Hollow inner Earth. It's quite often spoken about as the underworld, you know, and quite often there can be some dark resonance fields to that. I'm sorry, Scott, were you going to say something?
Oh no, and then yeah, that leads into like Telos. You know, that's another one that's, you know, under, you know, several people have actually talked about it. And it talked, you know, there was books that were written about Telos that were back in like 1880s. And I forget his name who wrote the book on it, but it also talked about, you know, cities and so forth being inside of Mount Shasta. Were we ready to dive into Mount Shasta, or did you have another question there before we were doing Mount Shasta?
Go for it. What's Telos all about?
Yeah, like Telos. Telos is actually, they say that the Lemurians live inside the mountain, and there's actually a city. Now, there's a guy by the name of J.C. Brown. In 1904, he had talked about the inner of Mount Shasta. He was actually a treasure hunter. He liked to look for gold. Well, he got hired by a European company to go there and see if they could discover any caverns of gold or anything that's around Mount Shasta or in Mount Shasta. So he says that he's searching around the backside of Mount Shasta, and when he comes across a cave entrance, and he goes inside. He decides, I'm going to go inside and find out what's in there. And what he ends up finding, he said that he found a city, and that he found like shields and gold. And then he also talked about coming across mummies or sarcophaguses that were 6 to 10 feet tall. So he had talked about that. And his crazy story is that he didn't talk about it for 30 years. So in 1934, he talked about it, and he wanted to go back there and try to find the entrance into where he believes Telos is. And so he grabbed, he sent it out that he's going to go there. And next thing you know, people are jumping aboard, and it's about 80 plus people are interested in going and finding Mount Shasta. So obviously he told a good story, and people actually believed that he found the inner earth, a way into inner earth there, into Mount Shasta. So the crazy part is that 80 plus people are getting together, and they're talking to him, and they're discussing. It's like if we were talking, hey bro, let's go. I know this spot, Mount Shasta. Let's get a bunch of people because we want to go check out this cave system, and I'll show you guys. I found it. I found Telos. I did find it. And then next thing you know, he just disappeared off the face of the earth. Nobody could find him. We've done research on trying to find, did he go somewhere else or anything like that? Did he move? No, he just disappeared. So 80 people, and some of these are his good friends. They're wondering, where is he? We're all set up. We're ready to go. And he just disappeared. And so that, the J.C. Brown, if you guys want to look that up, J.C. Brown talking about Mount Shasta is a really good one. But also Lowell Johnson. Now, Lowell Johnson, Brett was just talking about frequencies and stuff, about the inner earth frequencies. Lowell Johnson just recently talked about the frequencies that like Telos, because he said that he's been inside Telos and he's seen it. He tells a great story. If you haven't heard of Lowell Johnson, you guys really need to look him up for Mount Shasta. It's awesome. It's a great story. And but he actually talks about talking to them and meeting them and going in there and talking about there's a crystal pyramid, and it has like a white cap on it, and it changes. And he said that their outfits change like to the color of the top of the pyramid. So if the top of the pyramid, when he was there, it was white, and so they were all wearing white that day. And so if it was green, the top of this pyramid, they would change. So and he was saying that they told him that they're waiting for the surface people to, their frequencies to match what their frequency is, so they can actually come up and give us their technologies, talk to us about how they live, all that kind of stuff. But they're waiting for that frequency. So does that mean they're on a different dimension inside of Telos? Or does that mean that it's there and they can actually feel our resonation? And a lot of us are feeling that some kind of energy has definitely been happening over the past few years for sure. And we've all felt this energy shift. So is that part of the energy shift that, we're all sharing this love and light and, peace to each other? And we're really trying to send that out. And, how much we love God. And, we're trying to share that with everybody, and how peaceful it really can be if we all get together. And so are our friends down there, our ancestors, what are they to us? I mean, I guess we'll find out sooner or later. But yeah, I found Mount Shasta is like super special.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned Mount Shasta, Scotty. Obviously, I know you guys, are there. And I imagine that's not by accident that you guys are living there and you've chosen to have this experience there. But it's such an interesting place. And I mean, so many people across the world know of Mount Shasta. They know of the area. A lot of people know it's a very powerful energy center and a chakra of Earth, right? But also on that, there's a lot of activity there. And I mean, you guys can kind of back this up, right? That there's a lot of activity there, and not just now, but there always has been. But like you're saying, it's probably now quantum leaping, more happening. It's quite often there's ships and stuff seen flowing into Mount Shasta. It's a powerful energy, you know, it's a powerful place, a powerful energy center, should I say. And I think people from all over the world certainly get called there, and I certainly am called there. But maybe most of that's to meet you and Jackie, but also the three of us to go to Mount Shasta would be a beautiful day. But it's interesting that people do disappear there a lot. This isn't just something that happened then. This happens quite often. And there's a lot of talk that there is one of the, this is what we can talk about. How do you get to inner Earth? You know, how do you get into the underworld? How do you get into Hollow Earth? And certainly it seems to be that there could be an entrance or even some kind of city underneath Mount Shasta and Mount Is it Lassman? Is that right? Lassman?
Yeah, it's Lassen. Yeah, Mount Lassen. They actually talk about like the lizard people and stuff at Mount Lassen, and then like talking about people disappearing. Yes, at Mount Shasta, there was actually, Jackie and I were watching a program where a park ranger talks about a group of people. They went on a hike, and as they came down, one of their friends was acting a little strange, and next thing you know, they're looking up. He's a little ways away from them. And next thing you know, he takes his shirt off, he takes his shoes off, and he starts yelling, "They're calling me. They're calling me back to the mountain. They're calling me." And his friends are like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he's all, and next thing you know, I guess this guy goes running up the mountain. And I mean, it's Mount Shasta. It's not a small mountain. I mean, there's rocks, everything. But I guess this guy goes taking off up the mountain. And the park ranger talks about they did a search and rescue, and they searched everywhere, and they could not find this guy. He's just poof, disappeared. So many people come up missing. I forget what the show is called. It's like 411 missing or something in national parks. But they talk about, yeah, I mean, that's a good one if you guys want to check some cool stuff out about missing people at Mount Shasta. I mean, these people actually come up missing. No, you can't find them. And if you've ever been to Mount Shasta, you can see how wide open a lot of the terrain is on Mount Shasta. It's not like it's just blanketed with forest. You know, at a certain point, there's no more forest. It's just mountain. It's just so beautiful and the root chakra of the world. But yeah, Lassen is what you were looking for. Lassen, and they had reptilians there and Lemurians over at Mount Shasta.
And again, this is like repetition of all over the world that people are speaking about these places in Earth, you know, and having these experiences. And I mean, it's just incredible how many people across the world get called to Mount Shasta. You know, it's like Glastonbury in the UK. A lot of people get called there. You know I have. So my next calling is to Northern California, baby, to Mount Shasta. But yeah, I mean, it's an interesting concept, and you know, there's a lot of ideas. But certainly, one thing we can say is there's a huge amount of sightings, orbs, UFO sightings, and activity around the whole area. But certainly going from in and out there. And this is something that, as disclosure moves on, that some people might not even thought about, and others might be, yeah, I know that, Brad. But it's like a lot of these crafts, beings, and sightings might not be from out there. Some of them will be our back engineered technology, and that's a you know spoiler alert if you don't realize that. But also many of these crafts and beings might be coming from inside the Earth. That actually they might have been here far longer than maybe even the human's form has been here. You know, and we hear about it all the time through military, government, that these ships and crafts are flying out of the water. They go in and out the water. We've got, I would say Mount Shasta, from what I understand, is one of the major hotspots. Some people say the most hotspot. I would say it's the second in comparison to Antarctica, though we don't get to know much about that. So from the perception of consciousness, probably some of them might focus on Shambhala. I would say there's stuff going on there. And it's highly probable that some of these are advanced. And in India, when I was talking about the Nagas earlier, and the Indians believed in the Shambhala and the underworld, and they had these Valhallas, or these flying machines that are spoken about in the Vedas that are just mind-blowing when you see this. These are crafts with propellers, with satellite dishes on, drawn thousands of years ago, and they speak about them coming from Hollow Earth and Inner Earth, that they have flying machines and technology. So it's highly probable that let's say this goes back to, let's say, Atlantis, Lemuria time, that they were interacting, they had these inside the Hollow Earth, inside of Earth, sorry. Then over time, we've had disaster, catastrophe, wipe out, recycle. But inside, if they've got an energy source, they've got water, which we know, and they've got plants, they're probably living in an extreme situation, or a unique situation on Earth, where you haven't got to go through this. So they could have the resonating with the technologies, the wisdom, the understanding, the ancient teachings, the mystery teachings, all might still exist here because they're separated to Earth, you know? So I just wanted to add that. Anything else, Sky?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Lowell Johnson, since we were talking about that right there, Lowell Johnson spoke about he was in touch with like ascended masters. And Jackie wanted me to mention also the purple flame and
violet flame is
the violet flame.
Saint Germain.
Yeah, Saint Germain. Saint Germain is like really well known through Mount Shasta. But what I was talking about was Lowell Johnson had said that he speaks with somebody that was like his guide there was 36,000 years old. And he said he couldn't tell if he was 5 years old. He couldn't tell if he was 20 years old or 5,000, 36,000. They just were perfect looking beings. And they had like some type of, what was it? Some kind of like crops growing. But he was like, that's not, yeah, hydroponics. And he had said that there was hydroponic plants and stuff growing, but he was like, I think he said there was 1.2 million people that live inside Telos. So it's this huge place. And he's like, that's not enough food to feed everybody. And then he realized at that point that they get their energy and their food source was actually from sun energy. And they didn't need to eat food like that. The reason why they had it was because they enjoyed it. It was just something that was fun for them to do, maybe the taste of something, but did they need it to actually survive? He's saying no, that they were actually using the sun's energy to, get all of their substance and so forth. So yeah, I found Lowell Johnson is, when he talks about inner earth and Mount Shasta and Telos and stuff, it's really fascinating. I mean, Jackie and I, when we first heard him, we were like, oh my goodness, somebody that talks about Mount Shasta.
They're recent experiences.
Yeah, and they're more, 2020. So it's a more recent experience. And he also talks about Black Butte. So you have Mount Shasta over to the side, and then there's it's like this smaller mountain, and it's called Black Butte. But I guess there's a trail that you can walk up it. But when you drive by it, you can see the shale rock and everything. There's no way you're going to just start hiking up the side of that mountain. Well, they say that there's a lot of energy from that small little mountain as well. It like transmutes in between Mount Shasta and Black Butte. And so both of these have this super energy hub, and it's creating this. And then we had seen something else fascinating about Mount Shasta. So J.C. Brown had talked about him finding a cave entrance, right? And then next thing you know, it shows a guy. He's standing on, I believe it was the south side of the mountain. And it shows like this kind of bigger cave behind him, but it was sealed off. And there's two like concrete doors or concrete with metal doors or something. It was really weird. So, I mean, when we get a chance, we're going to have to go up there and check it out. But I don't want to get stuck inside Telos or nothing. I'm not ready to, have substance from the sun or anything. I get enough of that in construction. I don't know if I'm
ready, Scott. But when I come and visit, mate, I'm ready. But you'll be the one that have to break that to my wife. Where's Brett?
And then when you come, we're going to have to go because they have the healing. The Native Americans talk about the healing waters there, and that if you drink this water, it actually sends a lot of healing through your body. And I know right where it's at. And I've gotten Jackie and I some of that water before. You could stop by, people all gather around it. It's real beautiful because you could feel everybody's energy. When you go there right away, you can feel the calmness of everybody's energy that's around this water that's just flowing right out of the ground. It's, and it's a good size. I've recorded it before and thrown it on. But the water, I mean, it's the cleanest, freshest water. I mean, people say water doesn't have a taste. Well, it actually does. It's clean. It tastes clean, fresh and so clean. I mean, it doesn't taste dirty. It doesn't taste like fluoride or, pipes or anything like that. It tastes so fresh. So when you come, Jackie and I will take you up there, and we'll make sure that we go to the spring waters and so forth.
Well, that is definitely a date, guys. And I mean, yeah, with water. Man, I've drunk in the spring water in the UK, in Romania, straight from the mountains, and there's something special about it. And as we was talking about, I was speaking about earlier, with this water inside the earth. In my mind, I see that as some kind of recycling system, right? And like we see the poles melting, which is melting parts of Antarctica, which is a good thing, so we can see what the hell's there. But people think that the water levels are going to rise. Now, some of that is refreezing, we know. But also, I would say some of the water, where there's so much in the earth, that as the ice melts, then there'll be more water in the earth. That's why we haven't seen the levels raise to where they predicted they should have been. And now it hasn't really happened. So I just wanted to add that. But yeah, fascinating stuff about Mount Shasta. I can't wait to visit you guys. I've been thinking about that lately. So sort of in my imagination trying to manifest. And yeah, I can't wait to experience that. And we'll definitely go up there, Scotty, and we'll have a nice hike, and hopefully we come back and we're not one of the people. If we end up in Hollow Earth, man, I'll go, have a little hike around. But I would like to return to my wife and kids if possible.
We definitely have to tell them that it's just a visit. We need a two-way pass, not a one-way pass. And yeah, we definitely have seen at night when Jackie and I are outside, and the stars are just so beautiful at night that if you're up there, at Mount Shasta, I can't imagine how beautiful the stars and everything are, like, especially if you go out into the forest. And we really plan on doing this sometime. And so many people, so many groups get together, like a CE5. People get up there to Mount Shasta and do these, and they say that they've had contact. And we've seen several people post or share videos. Unfortunately, Jackie and I have never seen anything fly in or out of the mountain yet. But have we seen these crazy clouds that look like UFOs above Mount Shasta? Most definitely. But yeah, is that a different, Jackie and I have talked about, is that a different dimension that these orbs, when they fly into Mount Shasta, are they going into a different dimension? Or like Lowell Johnson had said, he said when he entered into Mount Shasta through this cave system, as he was being talked to, he looked behind him, and the cave system was closed off, like it was a portal instead. But he said when he looked around, he'd seen 5 other lava tube entrances that went to, they must be ways out or something like that. And I have met a guy that does cave exploration, and so I'm interested to find out from him, because he lives close to it. To Mount Shasta. I'm anxious to talk to him to see how far he's gone into Mount Shasta and some of these caves, because I'd like to go explore some of them. But like we said, you got to be careful when you go into these caves. You got to be prepared too. Make sure you got plenty of flashlights. So
yeah, that's a very interesting thought, really. And I mean, I suppose again, it would depend on to what part or realm, void or point you went into, hollow or inner earth. But it's, it's highly likely, like I was saying earlier with Nikola Tesla, he speaks very simply. So if you want to understand the universe, think in energy, vibration and frequency. And this could be one of the things that sometimes people, I think, get, like a higher frequency can create a higher density or lower density. Like that density can be in the same space, location, but it's on a different vibrational state. So some of these places like Shambhala and places like Agartha and these high resonating, these high resonating so-called places in the earth, it might be a frequency thing, and it's not the fact that we've been, some people might think this has been hidden from us, and in a way it has, but also from a higher level, we might have chosen a soul level to have this experience of separation, duality. But inside there, it might be resonating at a completely different frequency. So it might be like Avalon. We've spoken about that. The Avalon, you can get called to Avalon, and people would go and search for Avalon who had wanted to go and take it or take over that land. They'd never find it. They'd get lost in the mist. And it might be the same thing in certain places in inner earth, which would be a very clever protective mechanism of the universe or of consciousness or forms of consciousness to protect themselves, instead of having this duality experience that you can only enter if you're resonating at a certain spiritual frequency or a certain vibrational state, that without this you will never find it and you can never enter. And a lot of people do speak about meeting and going to these and guided to these places through astral realms, through meditation. So therefore they are visiting not physically, but they are changing their vibration of their consciousness, and they're experiencing it through the density. So it might be a matter of that, but then there may be other spaces on there that, like I said earlier, they're completely separate. Think about it. There could be spaces and huge places with mass amount of water energy that could be completely separate to Earth. It might have completely different species and beings, is what I'm getting at, you know? There might be some that look similar, that have come to the same code and all the same patterns, which Darwin proved when he went to Madagascar, that he found these species that had no genetic. Actually, they did not come from the same genetics, but that consciousness or that form of consciousness had come up with the same patterns to survive. So you have things that look like hedgehogs or porcupines, but they're not genetically related at all. They've just used the same patterns. So there could be so much going on in inner Earth, hollow Earth. And like I say, it could be so exotic that you may go to a planet, to a surface of another planet, and you might find life that's more similar or more understanding, or we can perceive better than going into some of this hollow. It might be because it's so closed off. Do you see my point on that? Where other parts of it might have a network, and then it's like, you know, and so Agartha may have a network of things, but then you may go deeper, and there may be pockets in the Earth that are completely separate, that have not been influenced by any outside genetics, anything out, that they're just evolving in their own realm, their own consciousness. So it boggles my mind to think what we could find in hollow inner Earth. And you know, and I would love the opportunity one day to experience that. You know, bioalescence, like you're seeing here, we see this in the deep. So when I spoke earlier, and I said when I was a kid, we were told in the dark, deepest parts of the ocean with the pressure, no life, man. Well, that's wrong. There is life, and a lot of it's bioluminescent, like you're showing here. And I imagine that if there is no light source, an outside light source, then the consciousness, the life forms will probably create their own, you know. So I just wanted to add that, Scott. Jackie, Ramblers.
Yeah, thought I'd throw a couple pictures on while you were rambling there, so people could see a little bit of Hyperborea, Mount Shasta. Here's some pictures Jackie did with her AI for Inner Earth of, like Brett said, the bioluminescent things that, you know, things can make light. I mean, people are like, oh, how could you be able to see underneath, you know, the Earth? You know, you go that far down, there's no light. Actually, things like this can prove that there would be light down there. And Emery talked about, you know, that it created that, like water droplets, I believe he had talked about. Don't quote me on it, but I believe he had talked about water droplets accumulating in a space that created like a sun. So it would be something like this down in the middle of inner Earth, and you'd be able to see. And talked about vegetation and rivers and lakes and creatures, all kinds of different plant life, all different types of creatures down there. So, I mean, like this, can you imagine walking into inner Earth, hiking through caves, and then you come across just this open world that's, you know, like being on top? It would just be so fascinating. That's why, and like Brett talked about, you know, there could be all these different colors that are down there. I mean, it's yet to be explored. And, you know, same thing is, the cool thing is, it's not like the ocean. In the ocean, we can only go so far without, you know, some kind of device, a submarine, without being crushed. But we can go inside inner Earth. Now, Jackie and I have talked about, are those booby traps? You know, sometimes you go down to inner Earth, and then the air, you can't breathe it down there, whether it be backwater or anything like that. But maybe the air isn't, you know, enough to be able to breathe down there. You would need oxygen tanks or something. Is that like a, you know, a preventive, so humans don't just go stumbling across their worlds? I mean, those are some questions too that are fun. But Jackie had a question for us.
Oh, hey. Did you guys notice any similarities between these inner Earth places?
Well, you know, there is similar stories, but then again, you know, I'm just, whilst you're speaking, you know, my mind's activating. I'm thinking about things, and it's like, how does it work? We got to think of the distance from, say, the North to the South Pole. Like how much? It's like we've drilled like 7 miles in. You know, it's like we know, and it's we've got these stuff, and we've done these tests, and through that we've said, well, it's highly probable that this, but we don't know. There could, who knows what's going on inside the Earth? And it's like, I'm picturing it. Could there be different layers to it? You know, different layers, and who knows what could exist in some of the deeper layers? You know, it's just, it boggles the mind. So yeah, I'm not similarities. I mean, a lot of people speak about the underworld. You know, they speak about going there, and sometimes on the ascension journey. We know we've heard stories of it being, like we said, like a closed off system, like maybe even like similar to Jurassic kind of time. But then there could be parts in there that are so different. And I've heard a lot of different stuff, a lot of similar stuff. And we got to think about the Earth. And let's just say it's, forget the flat Earthers for a minute. Let's say it's a sphere. So can you imagine the realms and holes in different places in there? And who's to say they're all the same? We can see on Earth like how different and how diverse it is from continent to continent. Though we're on the surface, but there could be places in there that are just completely separate. Some of them might be guided. Who knows how deep it goes, I mean, I'd love to know, and I'd love to venture in that, to get to a point when it's open again. And I imagine at some points, like Atlantis time, Lemuria, it was probably open and people probably went down there. It seems to be a very interactive time, not a time of separation, a time of oneness and understanding, and a golden age, So I would love to go down there and to explore Scotty, and if we went there, I would love to see what's down there. But we do hear stories. We see from India, they speak of Shambhala. We have many other people speaking of Agartha, this city. We have the Shambhala is like the capital, which many say the entrance is from it is Antarctica, and that seems to be like a very high resonating civilization. Is it? What species is that? God knows. People speak of light beings, we've heard of reptilians. Maybe it's a mix of all different species, they're resonating in a time of knowledge and understanding. We're here on Earth, and most humans, what we're doing, and it's information. We want information. Information is power. And they're probably resonating at a point where they don't need this information. They have knowledge and they have wisdom. I imagine it's completely different places there. But some of them could be highly technological, is what I'm getting at. Like they spoke in the ancient Indian times, these Van Hallers would fly out. We see crafts going in and out of the water. This is documented military in Antarctica. There's a lot of tangible evidence of this. There's crafts and stuff coming. We're looking out there for them and thinking, oh, they come in and there's a comet coming. Is that them? And actually, there could be, and they're probably highly likely. Here's a lot of it's going on right here. And where would be the two best places to perceive the human consciousness grow? One would be inside the Earth, and the second would be on the moon or the dark side of the moon, right? And I think we see evidence that both could be there. So yeah, I mean, I've seen some similarities, but also there could be places where it's very like animal-like, Jurassic, almost jungle wildlife. And on the other hand of that, there could be high resonating, high technology, civilizations that are not divided, that are unified, and they're shut off from the outside world because they're letting the human race of the surface dwellers and the craziness we do of this experience of separation and duality, and they're just letting us go, and they're shutting us maybe not to stop us, but until we're ready again to realize that, oh, there is a lot more going on in this universe. We're late in the game, and there's a lot of different species life, and there's a lot going on Earth. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I enjoyed rambling it, so good enough.
Yeah, it's the same as above as below. And you have bad, you have good. So to think that inner Earth would be any different would be crazy, because you might come across some reptilians down there. You might come across, beautiful, loving beings. There might be plant life, and even Emery Smith had talked about it. He had talked about plants that can eat you. Plants that are huge that could, eat you. I mean, so you're definitely going to have to be careful when you go into these inner Earth, places. All of a sudden you're coming across something, like Brett said, could be very Jurassic. You could have these huge plants. I mean, huge different animals. We have no clue what to expect when you go down there. He had talked about that before they went on their missions, they were actually shown videos of things that can hurt you, what different plant life. Water that can hurt you. They put their foot in this water, and he said that one of the ladies put her foot in this water and it like ate her foot away like acid. I mean, how scary is that? So you definitely want to maybe throw a rock or poke a stick in the water before you go, oh, hey, inner Earth water, and take a drink. You never know, because next thing you know, you're going to be acid filled. I mean, that would be, I guess you'd lose your hands. You wouldn't even get a drink. So that, yeah, I think that some of them would be somewhat similar. There'd be like, huge, vast openings to where there's plant life, there's forest, rainforest, like Brett said, over in China. They come across this huge cave that has its own rainforest, its trees, plant life, all different plant life. I didn't see that they talked about any animals, but they did talk about all the different plant life and that a river flows through it. So that was just amazing. That's kind of like proof, when we're searching for something, could there actually be an inner earth that sustains trees and so forth that we can actually physically see or have heard of? Yeah, there actually is. In China, there's actually an inner earth. There's a rainforest inside there. So things can grow in inner earth. If it's given the right, elements, everything's perfect. Things grow down there. So could life live down there? Most definitely. And like Brett said, you go further down and there could be pockets there. It could be all over, these different cities, these different places. I mean, it could be it could be like a heaven. It could be, the Garden of Eden. And could it be just a different dimension that's in inner earth? That could be a possibility too. Or otherwise, it could be an actual physical place that maybe you cross through this little portal and it's in further down in inner earth. That's how you get there, instead of just being able to hike 50 miles, or something like that to be able to get there. Maybe there's actual places that you walk through a portal. Lowell Johnson kind of talked about that in Mount Shasta, going into, seeing Telos. He actually went through, and I believe what he was talking about is that because he looked behind him and he said that it was closed, that would, to me, would be maybe they portaled through, or maybe they walked through like a type of a stargate. So yeah, I find, inner earth is just so fascinating with the variety of life and plant life and everything that could be down there, and, frequencies. Yeah, very fascinaing. What else did you have?
It's like we're told it's like a solid mass and it goes down to this core spinning. But in reality, we don't actually know that, it's it's the effect of, we haven't observed it. And one thing we can observe for ourselves is we can see a lot of spheres, a lot of balls. So we're living on one. We know the sun is round. We know the moon is round. People can say it's, the earth's flat, whatever. We can see there's a lot of spheres. When we look into, it's a natural geometry shape. So, and we're even to the atoms. We look at atoms and they're going around each other. So there could be stuff going on inside of this earth that we can't even imagine, And I just love to think about that. I like, the world could be, like, say, civilizations that have gone down there, been separate, high resonating. There could also be spots where there is like forests and jungles and, who knows, like dinosaur kind of creatures or spiders, who knows? But there also could be deep into the earth, these realms and these spots where could be the most exotic and unbelievable life forms that surface beings can't even imagine, because they're completely different. Like you said, I'm not sure if dimension's the right word, but density, certainly. They're at different vibrational frequency state, and they could be so separate. And I'd love to know. But I mean, if there ever comes a day when they finally say, man, there's an entrance to inner Earth at Antarctica, sign me up, mate, because I would go down there for a few years, and explore that. And I would love that, because I imagine it would blow your blooming mind when you go down there, especially if you go to these cities and these ancient cities they speak about in the Sumerian texts, they speak about in Egypt and they speak about in the Aztecs and the Mayans. Can you imagine? Even Admiral Byrd, who knows if how true that was, but a lot of that makes sense. I mean, the more I read that, the more I'm like, there's something to this. And these explorers that say this incredible, resonating, powerful place where it's unified. It's different. It's like you say, this as above, so below, but it seems I believe that. But it's now like this barrier where on the surface now we've allowed this time where we are separate. We've forgotten what we are, and we're experiencing duality. But then it's like that still exists because it's still within, but we're yet to fully, as a collective consciousness, in tune into that frequency again. And when we do, I imagine it will be open time on Earth again, and there may be beings coming from the space from these comets, and the people may be up, Scotty, knocking on your door, mate, saying, come in and have a look. It's just
right.
Man. Sorry, carry on.
No, I said, right, definitely, yeah. Have people come up, I definitely welcome them. I'd be like, hey, you got anything better than that bread that they talked about, though? But Stephen had talked about here that JP missions, was that JP, right? JP has visited inner Earth. The beings in inner Earth live a long lifetime, and they drink a longevity drink and make them of pure pomegranate and China. Chai seeds. I said chai seeds. Can increase our own lifespan by drinking this. Well, Stephen, if you got some of that drink, that would be pretty dope because you could sign us up. I want some of that drink. Some longevity. I think I could use some longevity drink. I think that would be awesome. It's amazing. Yeah, the different things, you know, that the technologies, the special healings. I'm sure that there's a lot of that they know about. They've been around for a long time, and they wouldn't be able to survive a lot longer than things that dwell on the land. On the surface, on the land. I said that funny. On the surface.
There certainly seems to be some manipulation with humans, at least for our lifespan. I don't believe we live our full lifespan. I imagine even the oldest of us that live are probably in reality dying as teenagers to where they should exist. But I mean, another thing I think about, you're speaking about the healing waters of Mount Shasta, you know, and I could say the same with Glastonbury and Romania, actually. And we do have these spots, but can you imagine the filtered through water deep into these places? This water must be something else, man, with all these minerals added to it. It probably cleanses, it takes out the fluoride, it takes out the chemicals, it takes any damage that we think as our arrogant selves we can do to this planet. I think it's believed and looked afterwards, you know, and it's been through so much. So can you imagine like some of this, like you say, with this water down there? You probably, if we went down there from our perspective and we went down and we drank this water with these minerals that's been cleansed and all that, you know, it probably would be, you know, like the elixir of life. It probably, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense to me. And hopefully one day we can get a little taste of that water, man, you know. Any more questions, Scotty, Jackie?
Yeah, Jackie wanted Jackie had a question for us.
Have you guys heard about the underground lizard city in LA?
I have. I actually know quite a bit about that one. When at first, like I had seen it, I had to study that because it was so fascinating. So they hired a guy to do a dig, and because he said that there's gold down there. And so the city at first denied him, and then all of a sudden they heard about the gold, and that he was like, "Oh yeah, if I find it, we'll share it. No big deal. I just want to be able to search and see if I believe he had a map or something that said where this gold was." So anyway, he starts digging, and instead he finds cave systems. Well, not cave systems, but tunnel systems. And inside these tunnel systems, they found like statues. They found carvings of reptilians and of a reptilian race. And he didn't find any gold. So I guess he ended up they did this for quite a while. They made a huge, and it's right underneath the city. And so instead of finding gold, he found like this underground city that had all these serpents and reptilian figurines and so forth. And so instead, I heard that, what was it, LA?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd heard that LA had actually built a monument on top of it, so they stopped digging there, and to stop him from the digging, and because there was no gold, but what they ended up finding was like a lost city of reptilians. That's what supposedly is underneath LA.
Well, that makes a lot of sense in Los Angeles, mate. Reptilians,
most definitely. And the energy there is definitely weird. I mean, if you go to LA, I mean, the people are crazy. Y'all in LA, you know you're crazy. So I mean, you can't get offended. You guys are crazy. I mean, I'm just gonna tell you, I've been to LA and you guys are crazy. Well, not all of you. I mean, there's some nice folks there, but the ones walking around on the streets with the tattooed face that, you know, is talking to himself nonstop. I don't believe he's talking to an alien. I think he's talking to, I don't know, his split personality or something. This is funny shit. If you go to LA, you're definitely in for a good laugh when you see some of the people that are crazy as shit. But yeah, reptilians. You know, it could be the reptilian, it could be the energy of whatever was underneath the land. A lot of places the energy resonates up as well as our energy resonating down below. With that Lowell Johnson, he had talked about Telos, had talked, the frequency. Once the surface hits that frequency to where we can actually communicate with you guys better, because it's like maybe a harder field to get through to get to us, to be able to talk to us. So if we can match that frequency with our love and light, and maybe they'd be more inclined to want to talk to us. So yeah, we want to keep on shining, everybody.
Well, we've got to be grateful for the experience that we're having in there, because at a soul level, on the surface of Earth, through this craziness that we've been in on this dark age, and probably highly probable of the soul trap is, oh, that's kind of true, where it's been repeat, rinse, as we gain a lot of experience from that. But through that, we're not aligned to that. But now just people like us having this conversation, people that are connecting to it, the people are coming awake and aware to this possible reality. As it soon this time may come when it may be open season, man, again, you know, we can meet other species. So are the human race quite ready? Probably not, mate. You know, I hate to say that, but it's certainly been in the UK, you know, trying to put digital ID and stuff up. We're probably not quite here. This isn't a way of wisdom and light and love. This is a control method programming. We've got a little bit to go yet, but it's moving forward, you know, and I've certainly known about a lot of this stuff for a long time through some of the experiences. I love a rabbit hole, as many people might have gathered. And things are changing, and the consciousness is changing. I've certainly witnessed that over a few years, and hopefully one day, Scotty, you and I can take a little trip into Mount Shasta, mate, go into the crystal caves, meet a couple of reptilians, and you know, like. And I think the reptilians get a bad rep a lot of the time. You know, we've got to understand behavior patterns when we think about reptilians, or any species, even ourselves. We got to understand and acknowledge that, being human, there's certain behavior patterns that come from that, and for that to us makes total sense. For other species that have a complete opposing behavior pattern, they won't make much sense to us, and we won't make sense. So we've got to go into this open-hearted, you know, not too love and light where you're going to get manipulated. You need to have a look, but to understand that reptilians probably do have a different behavior pattern. You know, like we can see reptilians on Earth, like the animal species of them. Quite often they're born alone, right? So they're hatched and they're on their own. So that would be if you imagine that evolved up into a, you know, an evolved higher consciousness species, then there would be different behavior patterns, because humans aren't like that. We get our little babies, and my 18-year-old daughter's coming back for Christmas, and I'll be hugging her. And you know, reptilians aren't like that, you know. So we can't judge them on our standards. What I'm getting at, and I mean, there's a lot of ancient speakings I can. You know, certainly in India, certainly in the Aztecs and Mayans, where they speak about these serpent beings and these reptilian beings, and they're known as the knowledge and wisdom keepers, you know, and that they might have a slightly different behavior pattern to us, and they might perceive reality and themselves different than we do, and that's okay. But yeah, not all hate. I hear a lot, but you know, a lot of hate I hear about the reptilians, and it's like, you know, have you met one? Because what I can say is I have met humans. Humans, some of them I love, you know, and I love them a lot, but some of them ain't great, you know. So, you know, let's get our own house in order before we start clearing up the cosmos. You know, that's all I'm getting to. So a bit off track.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that totally, bro. Yeah, Jackie and I talk about that all the time. You know, there's good and bad in everything, so you can't judge, you know, one person's story about reptilians being bad, because like Brett talked about, we had several cultures that said that, you know, the serpents, that reptilians were good and that they helped, and they showed them things, helped them with, you know, crop green, help them with, you know, whatever it was at the time. They were actually benevolent. They were not, you know, trying to, hey, come here, we're just going to eat you. And I you know, I love what Brett said too, because that's something that Jackie and I believe in very much, is that, you know, humans are weird. So to think that another race of something is weird, it's just like if, you know, anybody that watches Star Trek, you're going to see that these different, you know, places, yeah, some might be bad, but you watch Star Trek and you actually have a ship that's filled with all these different beings. And they all get along. Of course, you got, you know, your bad ones and so forth, but just like any fun story, you know, you're going to want to throw some bad into it. It makes it more exciting. You have them just frolicking around, nothing but good, you know, get a little boring there for you. You know, you want to throw some action into it. But on the other, you know, it's just on that ship is what I'm saying, is that there's all these different type of beings, whether it's, you know, a reptilian that's, you know, benevolent or not, you know, I just see it like that's their culture too. We all have different cultures up here, but I know Jackie had another question for us.
I was just wondering, what are the possibilities of breakaway civilizations in inner Earth? Have you come across anything, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I've got to say, I think Jackie's reading my mind, because there's a couple of these questions, man. It's like what I've just been thinking about. So, I mean, breakaway civilizations, I mean, it's an interesting concept, and we could speak about that, Lemuria, Atlantis, when they've gone into an Earth, that they have broken, that they were once civilizations of Earth. But if we're talking more modern times, I mean, a great place to probably start would, you know, as always, would probably be Nazi Germany, the Himmler, and then they were very into the esoteric teachings. We know, we see in Indiana Jones, they told us a bit of disclosure in there, that the Germans, among many other people, were searching around the world for certain relics, certain places. One of these places was Agartha. And they believed through their, and they believed they had a lineage actually to this. One of the places they believed would be a good place to start would be Antarctica, and they certainly went to Antarctica. They certainly took U-boats down there. They certainly took tens of thousands of personnel, a lot of them female and a lot of them psychologists, which could probably give you a guess to what they may have found down there. So yeah, breakaway civilization, the idea of that is either a government, a people, a corporation that has broken away with certain technologies and has become separate to Earth and is resonating on their own way, really. And yeah, Germany would certainly be what I would say one of the first in our modern history would be a breakaway civilization. They did go to Antarctica. The Ice Germans are true. They did find some stuff there. They were mucking around with some of the technology they found in Antarctica, anti-gravitational, cloning, genetic experiments, all this kind of stuff. So that would be one of them. And also the Rothschild banking family, you know, many people might not know who they are. Some might go, oh, the fucking Rothschilds. You know, a powerful bloodline family that go way back. They would be a breakaway civilization. They would be. And sorry, Scotty's making me laugh on it. But they would be. And they've actually got an island in Antarctica, which, you know, they're not trying to hide anything because they believe the continents of Earth are so stupid that they call it Rothschild's Island. And a lot of bad stuff's going on from there. And obviously there, you know, people speak of Elon Musk being the richest man in the world. That's total BS. I mean, you know, the Saudis are far richer than he is. The Rothschild family, the banking cartel of the world, who has financed every war since Napoleon, and just for a fun fact, and they're way richer than that. You know, you're talking amounts of money that I can't even speak the word. You're not talking billions. You're like something like quadrillion or some weird word I can't speak. That's their predicted wealth, and they certainly have breakaway civilization. A lot of this does go in under the earth, and I mean, again, people they might have heard of dumps, which is deep underground military bases, and that's kind of the idea here. And we all can admit that our government, the UK government, certainly America, man, fucking hell, they've got deep underground bases, and we know this to a certain truth that there is some things out there. But how far does this go, man? I mean, what's going on in Roswell and these other places? And apparently there's a whole network under the ground where they've dug and they've drilled. And these drills, they go back some of them to the like 1930s, 40s. You're not talking like yesterday. You know, you're talking about the 70s. They had these underground bases. They had tram systems or train systems that run all across the world. And there's a whole network that we've got in Hollow Earth. That it isn't hollow, that we've created into the dense materials of Earth. We built this, and this exists, and there's a fucking network that goes all around the planet. It's like, I want to go and visit Scott. I've got to go to, I've got to drive my car, go to the airport, check in, get on a flight. But in actual reality, probably down the road, I could go underground, get a tram there in 20 minutes. You know, this stuff exists, and there's a breakaway civilization, and part of this is in Earth. And what a perfect place. Again, it makes sense, you know, to do under the ground, because one, people can't see it. If you've got some kind of energy device, you're sorted, you're separate. But also the breakaway civilization from Antarctica, from the Germans, they went to space. And when they create anti-gravitational technology, people might think it's crazy, but I know if I had anti-gravitational right now, I'd be using it. You know, and some of this, if you look back into some of the records and documents that have been released, you can see that some of this stuff was found. I mean, Roswell is something a lot of people know about, but it goes back to Germany, and they re-engineered, and then America picked that up after the war, and with Roswell that helped them a lot. Russia also had downcraft, and there are parts in like the secret space program, which a lot of people again would go, what? But if they're going to go to space and we have this technology, it makes sense that you have a funding mechanism of it. A big thing to do, beat the Soviets, beat the Russians, but also at the same time, then you know there are other things, you know all this. You know the Germans have already done it. You have a secret space program. You know, spoiler alert, it doesn't cost 20 grand for a nut or a bolt. It doesn't cost that much. They're stealing your money, and they're using that money to create a breakaway civilization, which probably resonates all across the world. They're probably separate ones. So yeah, I hope that helps a bit with the breakaway. I don't know if you want to add to that, Scott.
Yeah, like Native American tribes and so forth have actually talked about their ancestors living inside the earth, and they're actually walking around with us now. So there's stories that have been told of people living in inner earth and actually coming out. And Stephen had mentioned too, yeah, we covered that a little bit earlier. And yeah, hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. So glad y'all made it and join us. But yeah, we had talked about the ant people a little bit earlier in the Hopi, talking about I believe it was 3 times that they were saved by the ant people. So yeah, that was very fascinating as well. And yeah, it's like breakaway civilizations and so forth. Most definitely, I totally agree with Brett on those. And we have a really good friend, Emery Smith. Our good friend Emery talks about his missions that he's actually gone down. So we've actually had recent firsthand, accounts of what he's gone down and seen. So you guys can check that out. It's pretty cool. He talks about the inner earth. And Jackie had another question for us too here.
Yeah, just one last question. So given the unexplained phenomena and unique energies associated with the Bermuda Triangle, do you guys think this region could be a doorway or portal to inner earth or something else?
Well, that's another thing. You've got me on the thing because I haven't really gone down this, but it's something I have thought about, so I'm all right with this one, Jackie. I mean, it's intriguing, the Bermuda Triangle. There certainly is tangible effects we can see there. What is that? It could be inside the Earth, or it's like we got to understand it goes in cycles on Earth, and the continents change, the water levels change, things get flooded, things change. And I mean, they go on about climate change. Yeah, the fucking planet changes. It changes a lot. And it could be it's inside of Earth, but it could be from a time when maybe there wasn't water there. And I hear a lot of people speak about that area, that there's a crystal pyramid under there, which would be on the surface, though it'd be deep underwater. But then underneath that, could there be stuff going on in the Earth? Highly probable. It's like ley lines, these energy centers, something I've been fascinated with from a very young age. And this is something I thought about today, actually. I was thinking about the ley lines on top of the Earth, but then I was flipping it inside the Earth. Like, are there different ley lines? Do they match? We're building the pyramids in this place. We're building Stonehenge in this place. These temples, blah, 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 churches, whatever. They're all built on these energy centers. They all line up. They all match. What's going on with the energy centers inside the Earth? Now, is it inverted? Is it opposite? Does it match? So who knows? There well could be. There well could be something on the surface that's creating this. Obviously, something there creating it. So it could be something on the surface. It could be something inside the Earth. It could be the two together, or it could just be some crazy ass energy center on the Earth, which aligns with certain planets, the sun, or something that causes craziness around there. But my initial feelings on that, and this would all it would be, is my feelings would be, there's probably some kind of city down there, some kind of, again, with the time of the pyramids, which we can see existed because there's living pyramids everywhere, and probably haven't even found all of them. But that's probably one of the pyramids, and maybe has something to do with Atlantis, I don't know, or that kind of time. And maybe it was a fall from a golden age to a dark age. But good thought and good question. You got me on. You really got me on you come in left field for that one, Jackie. But Scott,
yes.
Anything to add?
That might be a good one to ramble about next. Maybe we should ramble about maybe the Bermuda Triangle and also the Alaskan Triangle, and because
anomalies of Earth or something like that would be great. Anomalies,
yeah.
And that would then it gives us a few different things we can go down.
That might be a lot of fun. Yeah, Stephen had even talked about the Bermuda Triangle holds a mile long void shaped space arc under the sea. So yeah, it'd be a fun rabbit hole to dive down a little bit more. We know about a lot of planes and ships and stuff that come up missing when they do pass through there, and same with Alaska. I've heard a lot of crazy stories about Alaska.
It's it's a triangle. It's a triangle, which I like that shape.
Right.
We do like our triangles.
I like a triangle.
We do like our triangles.
I like a pyramid, I got one around my neck now. But the fact is, the triangle is interesting in itself. If I was to go deep into that rabbit hole, that's probably somewhere. Why is it calculated as a triangle, which is a very powerful, shape. And we all know the tip of the pyramid, or the tip of the triangle, or the apex, represents the all-seeing eye of Source, creator, which is very interesting. So yeah, I think that could be a fun one. Liking that, Steve, mate. Cheers, pal.
Yeah, I want to Unless you got anything else, I think we're pretty close to wrapping up here. Unless you had anything else you wanted to add in about Inner Earth.
Man, I'm sure when we finish this podcast, I'll be like, oh man, I didn't mention that. I didn't mention this. But this very moment, it is perspective, man. I've really enjoyed it. And it was a bit of a jittery start for me. I don't know about you, Scott, because it's been so long since we've done one, you know, so it was a bit getting into the flow, but I've really enjoyed it. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I mean, if you're new and you just caught us by luck, man, please put subscribe on. We'd like that and build it up. And hopefully we'll be back in a couple of weeks to do another one, maybe something to do with what we were speaking about. Or if anyone's got any ideas, please feel welcome to message myself, Scott, or Jackie. We've got a Facebook page. If you don't know Ramblers of the Roundtable Facebook page, you'll get us on there. And yeah, just want to say gratitude to you guys. Great to see you, Scotty. It's been a while since I've seen that beautiful face of yours, brother. And Jackie, thank you for the great questions and coming out of left field with that last one. Very good one. And yeah, just want to say, yeah, thanks for joining us. And you know, it's just a ramble. We ain't disclosing nothing. We're just talking. We're talking BS and shit like mates do, you know. Like in the UK, Scotty, we call it kitchen talk, you know, and you're at a party and you have a few guys in the kitchen, close to the alcohol, sat there just talking all night, you know, and that's kind of what this is like to me from my perspective. And I enjoy that. So thank you for watching and thanks for joining. And much love to you both and everyone that's watched.
Yeah, that's definitely why they call us the Ramblers, because you know, you'll find us rambling about you know, any good topic, any good rabbit hole. We definitely love to, you know, go down a nice ramble. And everybody's got a good rambler in them. And yeah, most definitely thank you all for joining us. We very much appreciate you. And you know, sending prayers and blessings over everybody. And I'm throwing hearts up to y'all. Hearts up. Much love, everybody.
Keep shining.
Jackie's keep shining. Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.
Boom.
Boom.